What is up, YouTube? It's Zero Prince, and I'm back once more, and it's been a little while since I've posted last, so we'll cover that in another day. But I'm here today because it is really close to Halloween now, and I want to talk to you guys about something from my past. I used to be a ghost hunter, or a paranormal investigator, as we prefer, and I'm here to explain a little bit about that to you guys, and my history with it, and where I stand now. I guess a little backstory on terms of how I got interested in the paranormal. I can only go back to my earliest memories, which are watching Unsolved Mysteries after church on Wednesdays. And all the segments were fine, but my favorites were always like the ghost stories and stuff like that. And then, I would go to the library as early as kindergarten, couldn't read a thing, but I knew the word ghost, so I would check out like the ghost books, like Nancy Roberts is like kind of a legend of Carolina ghost stories, Ghosts of the Carolinas. I remember the cover of that book. I would look through and look at the pictures and stuff like that before I could read a single word of it. And other than that, my grandmother would tell me stories, sometimes ghost stories, sometimes just, we'll say, spooky stories from her life. I guess that's really where it all started. I always remember being into the paranormal, always remember having a curiosity and being interested in these sorts of things. The main reason I'm making this video, though, is currently I would say I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't believe that there's anything beyond this world that can be proven, and that includes life after death. However, I have had experiences in my life that just don't quite jive with that belief. I don't believe that they can count as evidence for anything because they are personal experiences, but I do have some internal confliction with my current lack of belief and the things that I've experienced. So let's recount some of those. Before we move on to those individual experiences, I just want to talk for a minute about life as a paranormal investigator. This time of year, it used to be super busy for my buddy Daryl and I, who also has a YouTube presence, so I'm sure maybe you'll see him down in the comments. I'll try to remember to link him in the description. Basically a two-man team. We went by a few different names. We brought people in and out. We would rotate folk, but for the most part, it was the two of us because we were the ones that we trusted. We had similar levels of integrity, similar levels of belief. We both wanted to believe, but we wanted evidence that was irrefutable to outsiders as well as to ourselves, so that we couldn't convince ourselves and others that we weren't just, bonkers in the cemetery in the middle of the night. But anyways, we formed a group. We did investigations for at least about a decade, and during that time, we were on multiple local TV shows, explored lots of plantations in the area, this is an area where that was sort of a big deal back in the early days of our country. So we did lots of TV shows where we would go to those locations, and we'd have a little segment a couple of times a day around Halloween on the news. That was a lot of fun. I always drove traffic to our website and stuff, which always gave us new leads for new places and new people. Other times we did a lot of radio appearances. There were a couple of morning radio shows that we were on. One of those we did a ghost hunt in the studio just as an entertainment piece. Another instance, we were actually a part of a prize package for a radio station's morning show, where part of the prize was winners would be selected, and they would go to the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, which was purported to be haunted in downtown Myrtle Beach. They came, we were the prize, I guess. We toured through the building, we gave them an explanation basically of what we do, and we did our best to do a small investigation with each of the groups as they went through. We were on the cover of the local newspaper. We got some coverage here and there, and it was a lot of fun. Probably my favorite, the biggest claim to fame, as far as I'm concerned, is we were the second group ever to be allowed to investigate the old Charleston prison in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. We didn't really find much there, but still, it was an honor. It was very spooky. It was very cool. Now, in terms of those times that I had an experience that I can't really discredit, the earliest was I was a little boy, maybe I was 4 or 5 years old, and I would regularly see what looked like humanoid shadows going down the hallway of the house I grew up in and going straight through a wall. Happened regularly. I would ask my grandmother, I was like, well, did you just see that? And she'd be like, nah, that's just the shadows from the clouds moving in front of the sun. We almost never had the curtains fully drawn in my house as a kid. That means nothing. I was a kid, active imagination, all that stuff. The next example that I can think of happened when I was probably between 18 and 20. It was in the area of my hometown, a house that I have no way to verify that any of this happened. My only authority on it was someone who was a sheriff's deputy for the county but not during the time that supposedly this happened. There was a house in the middle of nowhere set way back in the field. The legend was that someone killed their whole family, disposed of their bodies on the property, that sort of stuff. We were walking back to it. Daryl, myself, and maybe a couple other people were walking back to the property just to get a look at it and take some pictures because it was so far from the road we couldn't really see it from our lower end telescopic lens that we had for one of our cameras. So we were walking down the road, cow pastures on all sides. Like, it's a house just isolated, surrounded by fields. We're walking back, every so often you hear terrifying considering, what we're up to, the story and all that stuff. But anyways, we're walking back, maybe we're halfway there, and then suddenly we're talking, we're recording, and we hear very clearly, very obviously a scream coming from the direction of the house. Was it that? Who knows? But it was a terrifying personal experience that it's not evidence, but for me, it was like, oh boy, this is something. But again, is it evidence? Not really. The next example is probably Alice of the Hermitage, or Alice Flagg. A very popular ghost story in this area. Look it up if you want to. If you have interest, I'll tell you guys about it sometime. We were just in the cemetery checking things out around her gravesite. We moved past her gravesite. I believe it was a family plot. Maybe it was a part of her family. I don't recall. But the individual plot was inside of a metal fence, and there was a gate. We were standing around it. We were recording. We were trying to do EVP, where basically you're trying to have a conversation with a ghost on tape recorder. That's essentially what an EVP is. We're doing EVPs, and Daryl asked if anybody there had a sign for us or something like that to let us know. And we heard, at that moment, the gate to that plot move. We flipped out. We flipped out in a very silly way, and we got very excited. And then, nothing further came of it. We left. But anyways, also, not evidence, but something that I experienced. Probably the scariest individual moment or situation that I ever found myself in. We wound up at this place called Lothar Hill Cemetery, or Montrose Cemetery. We were there with other people. We had never been there before. I think they had been there once before. It's a cemetery, abandoned, very old cemetery. At the time, very much unkept. At this point, I do believe it's been cleaned up. I think there were maybe 2 remaining headstones, and the rest were victims of vandalism. And even one of those headstones I remember being badly broken, badly damaged. So out front, they had a large collective headstone. Very odd in and of itself, but it had all the names. I don't remember it had dates, but I do remember it had all the names of everyone that was buried there. So, and even that was vandalized, spray painted. In front of it looked like the most glistening sand you'd ever see because of all the broken beer bottles that had just been pounded on that thing very obviously over the last decades at that point, I'm sure. I do have a full report of it, and if you guys care to have a full report, then let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll just recount word by word what I wrote, because I wrote about it on our website. I would write within a week or so about our experiences, all of the places that we would go to. We get to this place, very dark, very cold, but there were stories there about a child murder, all sorts of things of urban legend with, obviously there's no evidence of any of these crimes or stories, but either way, a very spooky place. We're going through an area that is the closest thing to an entrance we can sort out because of the level of disrepair this place is in. We start going through, I'm the last in, I'm the last out, because everyone, for reasons I can't say, my girlfriend at the time said that, I think she said she felt like something tugging her hair. Other people felt all sorts of other things. They turned around and booked it, and before I realized that they were booking it, I was like, what the hell? And, figured I'd follow suit and turn around and be like, well, what's going on? And before I could turn around, I heard the sound that I can only describe as maybe someone swinging a baseball bat, that sound. I heard it so clearly, and it terrified me. And we carried on. We did a little more exploring. By chance, every picture we took that night, that was the most certain time ever that I've been where I was sure that we were going to capture something on film. And we were using film cameras at the time. So anyways, we took all these pictures, and we, the next day, we're so excited to get these pictures developed. So I'm at my girlfriend's house. I'm trying to take the film out, or I try to rewind it. I've never had issues with the camera that I was using. It was a very high-end camera as far as it goes. For the time, it was fairly high-end for a consumer model. And I rewind the film. I pop the back open. Oh, shoot. The film. I see the film. I'm looking at it. It's not the roll. It's the actual film. I know that it's exposed. There's nothing I can do. So I close it. I go outside. It was nighttime at the time. I tried to wind it up as much as possible. Anyways, we try to get it developed. No pictures turned out. That night, I got home, and I was laying in my bed, and I was a ghost hunter. I was looking for these things. I did not want to see them alone. I did not want to see them in my house. Cut and dry, okay? So Either way, I get home. I can't shake the feeling that there's just stuff and people and things around me, in spite of the fact that they are absolutely not. So I had Christmas lights in my room, plugged those in, slept with those on, no less than about 2 weeks. But anyways, I'm laying there. I'm just about to fall asleep. And my grandpa, who I never met, his guitar was in my room. And then out of the blue, brong, I hear a strum of it. And heart started racing. I'm losing it. And I do think I ended up sleeping that night, in spite of the fact that I'm sure it was very hard to sleep. But yeah. So that was probably the most intense individual experience I ever had in the world of the paranormal. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that happened that I have zero explanation for, as most of these stories will begin, Daryl and I, we're not even exploring anything. We're just night owls. We're up in the middle of the night. There's a cemetery near the house that I grew up in. It's attached to a church. The church is very old. I don't know how old, at least the 1800s. It used to be a school building. It's maybe a half a mile from the house that I grew up in. Most of the people that are buried at it have been buried there for 20, 30, 50 plus years at the time. And also most of them are family. For weeks, I'd been seeing a glowing from inside of the cemetery. And this was the night that I decided, hey, Daryl, I've been seeing this light. Let's just go check it out. We go into the cemetery. We pull up beside this building. Plain brick building for the most part. And then there's a covered area that has like an arching doorway. Maybe it comes out 6 to 8 feet from the building. I think it's where the choir would congregate before entering the church. We park next to that. Driver's side door, Daryl is driving, is closest to that area where the choir would go in. We're just there to see what this glowing thing is. I have an inkling at the time. It looks like one of those solar powered lights. Whose grave is it on? That's really my question. Daryl's driving an early 2000s Tracker, which is a smaller SUV, but it's not the little compact ones that I recall from the 90s there. So anyways, we stop. Door's fully open. We walk over to the grave. I'm like, I don't know who this person is. Like, confirming my suspicions. It's a solar-powered light. I go to pick it up just to look at it. At that time, the driver's side door of Daryl's car slams shut. We book it. We both go in through the passenger side door, and we probably drove the half mile to my house. Record time. Every time I go visit my parents, I see that church, I see that cemetery, and I think about it, and I'm like, I always try to come up with a solution of how that door could have slammed closed. But that is one that I just can't fully put past me, in terms of, I saw something, I heard something, I wasn't alone in hearing or seeing it. We didn't communicate about hearing or seeing it before we reacted to it. And it's the closest to an undeniable, for myself, paranormal experience that I've ever had. This happened. I can't explain it. It sticks with me. The next encounter that I had, I was probably 18 or so, always having an interest in the paranormal. If there was a TV show on that dealt with the paranormal, especially supposedly true stories, I was there. Travel Channel, early 2000s, Friday nights. They would start maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would do these shows about ghost stories from around the country, around the world, and I was down for it. I'm sitting there watching. The sun's about to go down. I'm by myself. We live in the middle of nowhere, but at that moment I remember, oh yeah, right out there where my great-grandmother just fell dead while walking with my dad when he was like 4. So I think about that. I'm watching this ghost show. I think about the fact that a family member died right out there where I'm looking at the moment. Commercials on. I'm going to the computer room. I sit down in the chair. I don't pull the door all the way closed because I'm trying to hear the TV. I sit down, I'm doing something, talking to someone. I feel compelled then to look at the door. I look at the door, and it goes from about 70% open, so mostly closed, and then I watched it close, and then not close. Like, it was the pull that you do to make it pop so that it fully engages, but it didn't go as far back as to actually make the click and have the door remain closed, and then open again. I don't know what I did at that point, but I'm sure I went to go watch some more ghost shows on the Travel Channel. Little encounter, can't make too much of it. Who knows? Maybe there's a crazy draft. I don't know, but it stuck with me. Well, guys, I thank you for watching. I hope you stuck with me for this long. There's more videos to come. Apart from the explanation of where I've been the last few years, I have a couple other videos that are going to take a little bit of work, but I absolutely intend to put together on, we'll say, a similar enough topic to the paranormal. Though, again, I don't believe in the paranormal. That's a matter of, it can't be proven. That's not to say it doesn't exist. Like, that's why it's the paranormal. It's beyond the normal. Then people have tried and tried and tried. Cameras are more available now than ever. Recordings are everywhere. And still there's not any definitive proof. So if there's going to be in our lifetime, I don't know. We will see. But as of right now, I want to believe, sort of, but I also don't. Not that I don't want to believe, but I just don't believe. But I thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you back soon. You guys keep it spooky and have a happy Halloween and be safe.